Welcome to the Building Newfoundland and Labrador podcast, dedicated to exploring the interesting journeys of the people in the provincial construction industry. Presented by the Newfoundland and Labrador Construction Association, produced by Gale Force Winds. Join us as we chat with the inspirational individuals that ensure the continued growth of the construction industry and the province of Newfoundland and Labrador.
Well, welcome to another edition of the Building Newfoundland and Labrador podcast, presented by the Newfoundland and Labrador Construction Association and produced by Gale Force Winds. I'm Alan Dale, and with me, as always, my good buddy, Jerry Carew. How are you, Jerry?
I'm doing wonderful. I'm going to be even better now we talked to Rod, because I'll never forget getting off a plane one time in Halifax. And what hit me? Marco, Builders of Atlantic Canada. I've been in advertising for 30 years. But that really struck me. What a great saying, Builders of Atlantic Canada.
Yeah, 100%, Jerry. And it's always fun to get into these podcasts with the Construction Association, because these folks are really making a difference in our communities. They are indeed building our community, such an apt word. So without further ado, Rod, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Alan. Thanks, Jerry, for that. My name is Rod Ackerman. I'm COO at Marco. I've been with the Marco Group for almost 24 years now. I grew up in a little small town called Trinity Bonavista Bay. My dad was a contractor as well, so I got exposed to the contracting world at a very young age, you could say. I went to college, did the civil program, I guess in a quest to advance myself in the construction industry. And that seemed like the next progressive step. I end up meeting a young lady in Clarenville, and her dad was a general contractor. So as luck would have it, he took me under his wing and exposed me to general contracting and helped me, I guess, understand what general contracting was all about. As I mentioned before, my father was a contractor, but he was a subcontractor. So I would have only been exposed to a small portion of what the contracting world would have been all about.
Wow, you're coming at this from all angles, Rod.
Yeah, no doubt. After being introduced to the general contracting world, still a young man, and I'm not sure if I was settled down enough to really grasp that this was my calling, my quest, so to say. So much like many people from Newfoundland, I found myself out west. Yeah. In the quest to find the almighty dollar, for lack of a better term. So I did spend some time at West, and I worked for companies like Syncu Canada, things of that nature. But like many Newfoundlanders, the call to be home was just too loud. So I ended up finding myself back in Newfoundland, and fortunately, Marco, Tom Ekman at the time, interviewed me and offered me a position. So that was 24 years ago. I started with Marco as an assistant superintendent and worked my way up through the ranks from a super project manager. I was divisional manager of Marco in Moncton for 5 years, and recently moved back. Well, not recently anymore, it's 10 years now. Moved back to Newfoundland and to run the division here in St. John's, and currently I'm the COO of Marco.
Wow!
So that's the 10-cent tour of that, I guess.
Well, that's quite a tour. It's worth more than 10 cents, I would suggest. You've had some great mentors there. You named a couple of them. Tell me the importance of watching your dad and then the other gentleman there in the mix. Tell me about the importance of that mentorship for you.
Well, there's a couple of things there, Alan, because in the 90s, when I would have been old enough to understand what was going on in my dad's world, construction wasn't that great. There was a lot of, it was tough times for the commercial world. So there wasn't a lot of conversation around the table promoting me to stay in the construction industry at that time. Mm-hmm. But as luck would have it, I did, pursue civil tech program, which kind of, because I was stubborn, call it what you want, and I wanted to stay in that realm that I was somewhat comfortable with, I guess, because I grew up in it. And as luck would have it, as I mentioned, I met a gentleman from Clarendon that helped facilitate my quest to understand the general contracting world a little better. So that was a great stepping stone, and it may have been short-lived, but the only reason it was short-lived because as I mentioned, I was a young man. I had a lot of, I guess, other things going on in my mind, and I wasn't settled. And I'm glad I did that, because as an adult now, there is no desire or doubt in my mind that I made the right decision, because I was exposed to other things when I went out west. So yeah. I put my head to the pillow every night, knowing that I made the right decision, because I've experienced other things.
Good for you. Tell me about that journey out west. What was that like for you?
You know what? Alberta was very kind to me, as it has been for many Newfoundlanders. They may be experiencing some turbulence at the moment, but as a young man in the early 90s, you could basically pick and choose what you wanted to do. Yeah. So there was tremendous opportunity out west at the time. So I have nothing but positive things to say about Alberta and what they've done for many a Newfoundlander.
Rod, and you would have been surrounded by fellow Newfoundlanders out there as well, and I'm sure all of them with the same thing in their mind, I want to go home. Tell me what it was like coming home. What was that feeling like for you?
Every decision you make in life is met with some kind of anxiety. Yeah. Thankfully, I was met with Marco, and my experiences before Marco with the general contracting world, as I mentioned, in the 90s, were not always great. Construction at that time was pretty tough. Yeah. But Tom Hickman made a promise to me, and the things that he was saying to me at the time was very appealing. And you know what? Everything that he said, he did. And that's why I'm here 24 years later. He believed what he was telling me. He facilitated everything that he said he was going to do, not only to me, but to the entire team. And I think that's why, the retention within this company is very real, and people want to stay because we sell we practice what we sell.
Rod, what a powerful endorsement for sure, and a nice conduit into. Tell us a little bit about Marco. What are you guys involved in?
There's a lot to talk about. Fortunately, it's quite busy these days, especially for Marco. We've managed to latch on to a couple of the 3P projects that Newfoundland are undergoing. We're doing the Cornerbrook Acute Hospital. We're doing that in a JV with PCL, and we're also doing the NAMAF project at St. John's. So that's the two projects that are very much alive and well today, and keeping us busy, at least in Newfoundland. Nova Scotia, we're equally as busy. I would say that Nova Scotia is probably busier than Newfoundland at the moment. There's a tremendous amount of opportunity in Nova Scotia, and even in New Brunswick at this time. So it's a busy place, and it's a good place to be at the moment.
Rod, we always talk about the opportunities that exist right now in the construction industry, largely in Newfoundland, and as you point out, really across Atlantic Canada. Tell me about the exciting times that are ahead for people that are looking at this as an option.
Well, I think construction has evolved tremendously over the past 20 years. It's caught up with the times for sure, and the opportunities are tremendous. What construction is offering to the people are much different than they would have been 20 years ago. There was a stigma on construction, I know, when I was a kid, that was tough to shake. I think that's long beyond us. Right. There's a lot of good construction companies. They understand that it's difficult to find good talent. It's difficult to retain good talent. And in order to do that, you need to be able to provide a great place for them to work, a safe place for them to work. And I think the construction industry in general, nationally, has done a good job removing that stigma and making it a better place for people to reside.
And responding to the needs, what people are looking for, right? And that truly shows an organization, an institution that is an industry that is evolving to meet the needs of the changing workforce, right? And that's fantastic to hear and actually to see play out. Sounds like you have a great journey getting there, and you guys are involved in some really interesting stuff. Rod, what's over the horizon for not only Marco, but you personally? Where do you see yourself in 5-10 years from now?
Well, I mean, we've had a pretty steep trajectory. We've been growing rapidly since I've been here for 24 years, and I don't see that changing. You have to keep moving, swimming upstream, or you get stagnant and you just fade away, which is the story of many general contractors and subcontractors. They become stagnant and they often don't outlive the second generation. Right. So you have to be diverse. You have to have a plan. You have to have a succession plan to ensure that your company can outlive yourself. So I think at this stage of my life, I'm trying to spend time mentoring people around me so that when I'm gone, this company will live on, and we can adapt and change as the times do to make sure that we don't become stagnant. You have to become fluid. You have to stay fluid. You have to have people around you, and you have to listen to these people and understand what the trend is today. What's going on today? What's exciting today? And one thing about our company, we are still pretty organic. We live in the Maritimes. You're not always exposed to everything. So surrounding yourself by good people that's been exposed to different things and having an open mind with respect to what they're saying, I think is paramount in order for your company to outlive you.
Wow.
Quick question. When you're mentoring people, how does it feel?
It feels great. I feel old some days when I find myself mentoring, but you know what? It is what it is. I think it's the most rewarding thing any individual could get, is to have that sensation that you're mentoring an individual, and that person is actually taking from that time that they're spending with you. Mentoring is not easy to do, especially when you're busy and you have a very matter-of-fact personalities most days, is to find the opportunity and find the techniques that works with the generation that you're trying to mentor. I'm a baby boomer, so my way of thinking is not necessarily the way of today's youngsters that are coming into the industry, and trying to understand that is probably the most difficult thing you do as an older gentleman.
What a wonderful conversation around mentorship, and your approach is such a sophisticated one, Rod. I mean, the whole concept of succession planning into your industry, it's so vitally important. And I really liked your comment around, surrounding yourself with good people, being open-minded and listening to their ideas. I mean, that's a very inviting comment for somebody that's looking at your industry for a potential career path. That's fantastic. Rod, and you've had a wonderful journey to get there, and good mentors along the way yourself. We often ask our guests to leave our audience with a small piece of advice. What might that look like, Rod?
It may sound cliche, in today's society, but having a diversity strategy, bringing people into your organization that could help expand your thinking is going to help you grow as an individual. It's going to help your company grow, and it's going to help your community. And I think the construction industry needs to open their mind, and I think the construction industry needs to take heed to this and run with it, and adapt and adopt and make it viable in our community.
Absolutely. Jerry, your thoughts?
Was interesting, Rod. One of the things you said early on, when you were trying to figure out what to do, you had a lot of things going on in your mind. That actually made me reflect on my own time in university. It's a very difficult time. I have an 18-year-old who just started the Marine Institute. There's a lot going on, and trying to figure out where you're going to be. But to listen to you talk about that, and I think any of the youth that listen to this, we all have those things. There's angst. You're not sure of what direction your life is going to take. But to see you, I guess, come from those thoughts to where you are now as chief operating officer of a very, very successful company is extremely inspiring. So for that, I'd just like to say thanks.
No, thank you both for taking the time to speak with me today.
Well, another wonderful conversation on the Building Newfoundland and Labrador podcast. There's no doubt about it, Rod, you're making an impact in your industry. You've certainly got a genuine, straightforward approach about you, and I'm sure that the people that you mentor are gaining from that knowledge. Jerry's right. Marco's doing great things, and you know what? Largely, the whole industry is doing great things for Newfoundland and indeed Atlantic Canada. It's amazing to be a part of building something, and you guys are front and center of it. So, Rod, thanks very much, and thanks for joining this incredible podcast brought to you by the Newfoundland and Labrador Construction Association and Gale Force Winds. Thanks.
Thank you.
Oh, Jerry, you caught me drinking out of my NLCA mug. So welcome to the Building Newfoundland and Labrador podcast, presented by the Newfoundland and Labrador Construction Association, produced by Gale Force Winds. I'm Alan Dale, and with me as always, my good buddy from the East End of St. John's, Jerry Carew. How are you, Jerry?
Well, I'm doing really, really well, Alan. I was just talking to Gina prior to, and we're really excited to have Gina Tapper on. She's going to tell us a little bit about herself and her history and her association with the association. And I think there's some real firsts and some real interesting things going to come out of this conversation today.
100%, Jerry. I love talking to the people that are building Newfoundland and Labrador. I'm always inspired by their conversations, where they come from and what they're doing. And I love the fact that when they drive by things, they actually build things. They can point to things around our province and said, I was a part of that. And indeed, not only our province, but across our country. So Gina, without further ado, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Thank you. I'm certainly thrilled to be here, and thank you so much for the invite. My name is Gina Tapper, and I'm the owner of Hampton Building Systems. So we're a subcontractor in the construction industry, and we specialize in metal siding, steel buildings, architectural panel systems, and we recently added a glass division where we do aluminum and window products. And I've been in the business since 1997. So started at a young age. I was only 23 when I started. I originally started a competitor to Hampton, actually. That's where I got my start. And merged with Hampton in 2003, and have been growing it since then.
Where are you from originally, Gina?
From Torbay, still live there.
Still live there today?
Yeah, moved around a little bit, but not far.
Was construction in the family the whole time, or?
No, there's no reasonable explanation for how I ended up in construction or being an entrepreneur for that matter. I came from two teachers.
Okay.
My parents were both teachers, and no entrepreneurs in the family. And I just managed to find my own path somewhere along the way.
What was it about construction that caught your attention?
In high school, I thought I wanted to be an architect. That was my original thought. I just did some research, and that piqued my interest. And I actually did a job shadowing program through the high school and followed an architect for a day. But he was pretty busy, and he had me follow his technologist around more most of the day, and just really enjoyed talking to him and seeing. I quickly realized I'm not really creative, and an architect was probably not the best path, but loved the technical aspects and had more interest in buildings.
How long was that experience with the architect's technologist? Was that a week, 2 weeks, a month, 6 months?
It was just a one-day thing.
Oh, you're kidding me.
Yeah, just through high school. Yeah.
Right. It's amazing how something like that can be so pivotal in our careers, is it not?
For sure. Yeah, because up to then I'd had no exposure to it really. Just my own research and reading books.
So that person took you around and you sort of got bitten by the construction bug at that point. where did you then take that that excitement? Where did you go to school for this?
So from there, I did the architectural technology program at the College of North Atlantic.
Right.
And once I graduated from that, just looking for a job. I mean, most people back then assumed that a technologist would go to work for an architect. But I was more interested in construction, and it was really difficult to find a job at the time. So I kind of leveraged the fact that I was a woman and got some funding for my employer, and basically sold myself that way, that I had a 1-year wage subsidy
Right.
for women in science and engineering, and used that to get my first job.
How many women were in your program with you, Gina?
There were 5 of us.
5 of you. Very
Yeah.
smart to understand that there was programs out there to help your employer help you. That's fantastic.
Yeah, for sure. And I wanted to stay in Newfoundland, so you had to give yourself some advantage over
Right.
the other.
So tell me about that first experience, that first work experience.
That was great. I was only there a year, and the business closed, unfortunately.
Mhm.
But that kind of propelled me. It was a company exactly like my own company now, but did the same thing. And the owner decided to close because he had an opportunity in the oil industry. So it was just, I very quickly became unemployed, and I went, and a coworker suggested that we open our own business, and it just ran from there. And just, I took advantage of that opportunity. He was more experienced than I was. I was only 23, so it was a definite leap. I wasn't intending to do it 1 year out of school, but you just got to see the opportunities and take them if they're there.
So Gina, there was 2 of you when
There
you
was 2 of us. Yeah, I started with a coworker, and he was originally from Ottawa. So after 2 years, he moved back to Ottawa, and I bought him out. But he was one of my early mentors, and got me started and encouraged me to.
So you're 23. You're 23 years old. 2 years later, you're the sole owner at 25.
I am, yeah.
Gina, tell me that sounds great. Tell me that you described your business partner as encouraging you to start your own thing, and then you described him as a mentor. Explain to me the importance of both those things, the little bit of encouragement and the importance of mentorship.
Yeah, it's just so easy, when you're young, to get overwhelmed, and you wonder if you're making the right choice, so you really need those people in your life to encourage you and I guess just give you a little push, especially that young. I mean, that was definitely the biggest challenge I had, was starting a business so young, having no net worth, no equity. But at the same time, I had nothing to lose.
Right.
So it was kind of, it was easier to make the leap, I guess, when you don't have a family depending on you or bills to pay, too many bills.
Yeah, you're able to accept a little bit more risk early in your career. Yeah.
And that's what he wanted, from his perspective. I was young, energetic, I had a lot of passion for the work, and I had the time to put in. So he was looking for, a bit of that, and in return, I got his knowledge and support.
Alan, I got to jump in. So I'm thinking about this. So first of all, let's talk about age. So you're 25. A young person navigating in any business is a challenge. You're in the building and the construction industry. Let's couple that with the fact you're a female. Let's be frank, that hasn't been easy either. How did you convince anyone to continue to do business with you? You're 25. I'm like, how did you do this?
Well, I think, early on, I decided I wasn't going to focus on, fighting people's opinions. I had, I was sure I could do it. And even when I wasn't, I pretended I was. And just, I find if you don't fight, all you need is an opportunity. So if they were willing, I'd fight for the opportunity. But, there was different paths. And if I got resistance in one direction, I just turned to the other. So as long as someone was willing to give me an opportunity, then I was fine with proving myself.
I love that, Gina, that you were so confident in your skills that all you really needed was the opportunity.
Okay.
Once the door opened, you knew that you could prove yourself. And obviously, that the proof is in the pudding. Here you are now with your own company. So tell us a little bit about where you are right now in the moment. What exactly do you do?
Right now, I've got, throughout the years, I've certainly worked in every aspect of the business for the most part. But right now, I'm more running the business. I've
Mhm.
certainly transitioned through working in the business to working on the business. And, I'm basically the problem department.
Right.
If we have any problems or just, analyzing risk and it's hard, with construction, the majority of our work come from tenders. So as much as you try to plan that you have continuous workflow but between tenders, you get some, you don't get others. The schedules that are on paper are not what happens. There's a lot of juggling and planning and best laid plans. You need to make it happen. So, I'm involved in everything, just try to keep us all going on the path we need to go on.
Keeping everything level. You need to be in that industry, the way you describe it. You need to be very agile in your thought and adaptable and how things unfold.
Yep. And everything's constantly changing. So keeping up with change, new products, new technology, it's never boring.
Right.
It's always.
So let's
there's
tap
always
into
something.
let's tap into that in a second. You say it's never boring. So if there was people out there right now looking to the industry, what would you tell them?
I think, if it interests you, just, do your research and, follow your passion. Like, there's so many different ways to go in the construction industry, whether it be different specialties or general contractor versus subcontractor. And I think if you find what interests you the most, then it's just, that's the start of your path, just because don't get overwhelmed by where you start, because where you start is not going to be where you end up. So you can change things as you need to.
Right. That's pretty interesting point to pick up on. And oftentimes when we're starting a journey, we think that we're on a path and this is the path we're going, but you really have to be open to allowing it to evolve, right? And be open to change. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, goals are important. You definitely need to have goals, but I truly believe you can't plan how you're going to achieve your goals. Not if you're too rigid in your plans, you're going to miss other opportunities and other ways to do it.
Yeah, 100%, Gina. But we've spoken to many, many people now within your industry, and I'm overwhelmed at how open and inviting the industry is to welcoming people in and allowing them to do just that. Give us a try. Let us help you with your path. I'm assuming you see the same thing every day.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it really is. I think there's plenty of opportunity in that industry. And quite honestly, the type of jobs that are there are the type of jobs that you can raise families off. I mean, they're well-paying jobs.
Yeah. And there is so many opportunities. I mean, the industry is getting older. We need young people to come in and desire to run with it. And there are many opportunities coming up as we have, a lot of the industry retire or change their focus. So there's plenty of opportunity for young people.
It's funny, we hear that a lot, Alan, don't we? And I mean, historically, I mean, I did 2 degrees in university, but the skilled trades are an area that I think a lot of us have been overlooking, and us being the older people telling the younger people what the opportunities are. That's why I really enjoy, Gina, talking to you, because you're giving the audience the knowledge that there's a huge opportunity out there, right?
There is. The only thing that will stop you is fear.
Right. Yeah. You stop. That's right. Fear and, just taking that first step, right? Sometimes the first step is the hardest. Would you agree?
Oh, for sure.
I bet
that's why start young. You won't worry about it.
I bet you when you were 23, that first step to get out on your own, that was a big step.
It was.
Yeah.
But it was just good timing for me. I was unemployed. So,
Right.
I really had nothing to lose.
Well, and and Gina, that's fine. I bet, as we come out of the tail end of COVID and look to the future of work and people are kind of deciding the direction they're going, there'll be many people out there that are probably in the same position you were those years ago that are right now unemployed or indeed looking at another career direction. So for many of them, they may well be at the same decision point as you.
It's true.
Right.
COVID has changed a lot of things. Yeah.
COVID has changed a lot of things and created a lot of opportunity. Jerry?
Well, there's one of the things that I think you mentioned at the very beginning before we started recording. You were the first female chair of the NLCA, correct?
I was.
That is an accomplishment in and of itself. And I tell you what, I find amazing. You're actually running a business, but you're also you're doing work on the side as a volunteer. Amazing. Just amazing.
Yeah.
Just talk a little bit about what that means to give back to the community, give back to an association, which essentially is helping your colleagues and sometimes your competitors.
Yeah, the construction association was always, it was one of the first things we spent money on, was for the association. It was very important for us. It was very, for the function of our business. Just back then, it was mostly a plans room. And it's grown so much over the years. And I got involved because I was interested in, at the time, we didn't have an electronic plans room. It was all paper copies, and things were moving quickly into a more technical zone. And just to be able to focus on that change and drive some change that I wanted to see in the industry. But it was such a learning experience. So, my own reasons for going in was certainly not what I got from it. It gave me such a vast knowledge of the industry. Like, you see every specialty, all the different groups of electrical, mechanical, general contractors, trade specialties, and just you see how it was really opened my eyes as to the importance. We all have the same challenges, but we all rely on each other, right? At the end of the day, all of those trades are needed to get the building built. So it was a great experience. I was on the board for 7 years. I was proud to be the first female chair, and certainly, I learned a lot about the past chairs of the association and the impact they had on the industry and just how they built it. The construction association itself, how it was founded. And I found it a great help in moving me forward and empowering me to do more.
You've had a credible career, Gina. You've had, and now you're expanding into glass. Just talk a little bit briefly about, where you want to take the business. And I guess, what we'd like is something that Alan usually says is leave us with a little piece of advice. So you're taking the business where?
Well, I'm always looking for opportunities to grow, but I tend to, focus on our main trade. And I believe that, you're better off doing something right. So I'm just looking for opportunities right now to grow. And we're certainly in recovery mode from COVID. It had a delayed impact on the industry, but we're just finding that it's coming back now and our pipeline is filling again. So I'm just looking to get us back to where we were before all that happened and grow it from there.
So I guess the last piece is this. What is it you would say to aspiring young people out there today? What's your piece of advice for them to help guide them in their search?
I think the biggest thing is just, surround yourself with people who empower you. To look for other people to make you better. And sometimes it's hard to find the right fit, but just keep trying and do your research and look for opportunities.
That's great advice, Gina, and thanks very much for that. Jerry, your final thoughts on today's podcast?
Well, Alan, we're approaching the 1 year anniversary of our little initiative, Gale Force Winds. The Building Newfoundland and Labrador portion of that is expanding, and it's just an absolute pleasure to talk to someone like Gina, who's been, doing something special for so long.
You make the necessary changes when you need to make them. I have to tell you that it was a wonderful conversation today, and another great edition of the Building Newfoundland and Labrador podcast, brought to you by the Newfoundland and Labrador Construction Association, and indeed produced by Gale Force Winds. I can tell you this, that the construction industry needs more Gina Tapper. So thanks very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And welcome to another edition of the Building Newfoundland and Labrador podcast, presented by the Newfoundland and Labrador Construction Association and produced by Gale Force Winds. I'm Alan Dale. With me, as always, my good buddy from the East End of St. John's, Jerry Carew. How are you, Jerry?
Well, Alan, I noticed you're showing the NLCA mug. I wanted to get this mug because it was given to us for the podcast. I couldn't find it in the house. My 18-year-old absolutely loves it. But what I'm really excited about, though, is getting to know more and more people within the association and the people that are building Newfoundland and Labrador. As I've said on various episodes, I've sold advertising for 30 years. I love people like Max who build things for a living. So I look forward to delving into it.
100%, Jerry. And I got to tell you, if your 18-year-old loves the mug, I bet you there's lots of 18-year-olds out there that would love this industry, because there's lots of opportunities out there in this industry for young people. So without further ado, Max, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, good morning, Alan and Jerry. I'm Max Day. My position with the NLCA is the Standard Practices Chair. I've been in that position now for 3 years now. I grew up in Portugal Cove, St. Philip's, just on the east side of St. John's there. So I've spent my whole life there. I still live here now, and I don't intend to move anytime soon, albeit I would not mind going to the West Coast in a nice log cabin type thing that you got on go there, Alan. But I got to raise my kids were as close to home, because kind of need the parental help for sure. So
looks pretty cozy, Max, where you are there with the fire going in the background.
Yeah, I got her going pretty good here. I live a pretty simple life, as you can probably see. So that's me.
Max, was construction in your family growing up?
No, I can't say that I grew up in a construction-oriented family. I grew up more, my family was more into the automotive, and, my dad worked with the airline for pretty well his whole working career. And, we like to tinker with things. I grew up wanting to be a mechanical engineer, I guess was what I wanted to be, or even a car mechanic. In my senior year at high school, I worked in a garage for a couple of years, cleaning floors and helping mechanics. And I started taking a liking to that industry. But it just, at the end of the day, it wasn't cut out for me either, to be totally honest with you, because I was, I don't know, I just seen the broader spectrum of things, I suppose. And I went into university to be an engineer. My father was always on me. He said, "Be an engineer." He said, "Go in like your cousin, be an engineer." He said, "You'll make lots of money." That was kind of the driving force as a kid growing up. And I did pretty well in high school academically. I was able to get through the program for the most part with a B average, solid B average. So I definitely met the requirements to get accepted into university. But so Dad was always on me, and I went into Memorial University, and I was going to be a mechanical engineer. That was my intent in life, to be a mechanical engineer and probably work with the oil industry. That's where I was going to. And back in the early 2000s, when I started into one, boy, what a smack in the face I got now, to say it lightly. Having to walk 10 minutes between classes. We didn't go to a small high school, but it wasn't huge. We weren't the same buddies. So you had to walk 10 minutes and get to another class, and you didn't know a person. frankly, you couldn't understand the professors that were teaching math and English, or not English, but math and science and these kind of things. And man, it just wasn't for me. I was having such a hard go of it.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was pretty well ready to give it up. I went back working in the garage. And so I went back, give it a second go around. And I got into the Faculty of Engineering at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So again, what another smack in the face now, was getting into faculty. You're with the same people all day, but there was probably, I don't know, 250 people in this big lecture theater over at the engineering building. So it was intimidating, to be honest with you. But I was a pretty outgoing type person. I like to meet people and talk to them. So you made some buddies, and you made some buddies that were a little further down the road and stuff like that. So I had been going. I was putting my nose to the ground, trying to get through it, and had to have a couple of meetings with the dean because the academics wasn't quite where it was to, of course. And I got through my first year by the skin of my teeth. And at that point, then we had to choose our discipline. Like, you do it a year of general engineering, then we choose our discipline. So I was still wanting to be a mechanical engineer, working in the oil industry. Construction really wasn't a thing to me.
Mm.
So anyways, where I was having trouble academically, a buddy of mine that was in civil engineering, he was a little further down the road, and he said to me, Max, you should take civil. He says, it's a little bit easier than mechanical engineering. That's what I was told. So I said, okay, well, I'll sign up for civil. I said, I'm not very good at this whole bookwork thing, to be honest with you. So at this point, then I signed up for civil engineering, and this was the co-op program, right? This is what I was doing, was cooperative engineering. Right. And I still reference it as, cooperative engineering. That's what made it for me.
Okay.
I got in, the academics, I just skimmed through, scattered meeting with the dean, say, Max, is this really for you? And all that stuff. I kept doing my work to get through it, but I really gobbled up the work terms, right? So I come out and I started work. My first work term was not a great one. It was with the provincial government, and but it got me into my first job. Was we had to go stand on the side of the road in Avondale and watch the excavator dig a hole and put a water and sewer connection in. I said, that's pretty neat. I said, I like this. I like outside. I like hands-on. So I kept into it, and then after I did that, I got to know some general contractors and things like that. I was working a lot in I got water and sewer infrastructure is what I was working in first going off. And I got to meet this guy, David Faye. He was from Ireland, and he was actually part of the Marco group. He was tied up with, and they had this group company, Faye Environmental, and he had approached me and said, why don't you come over with us for a try and see what we're all about, he said, and learn about some things. So what they did was build these specialized water treatment plants. Mm-hmm. Geez, when I got into that, was that right up my alley. It was hands-on. I was putting pipes together. I was going all over the province. I spent a year in Burgeo. I was up in the Northern Peninsula. I was in Terra Nova Park. Like, I got to really get into this whole industry, and even though I was doing my engineering program, I was pretty well working with them full time in between the whole. I do the co-op, so I spent all my work terms in with this group of companies working, and I got to learn a little bit about the Marco side of things as well, because they were they weren't as large as they were now, of course, but they were still a fairly large group of companies, and they were certainly doing all, expanding. You could see it was a growing animal. But I was working in this environmental company doing the water treatment stuff. And, I was anticipating that when I'd finish school, I'd be staying with them, but that was a very specialized market. So there really wasn't much work for it after a couple of years. It was really busy for a couple of years, and then it kind of died out. So then so when I finished school and I was out again wondering what I was going to do. I was a civil engineer. Yeah. Didn't know what I was going to do. Needed to go to work, had a house getting built and all that stuff. I mean, I was a little bit older than my classmates because I took the 10-year plan, I guess, to get my engineering degree, because I just wasn't caught out for me on the academic side of things.
Right.
So at this point, then started looking for work, and a buddy of mine, my wife's, or she was my girlfriend at the time, her friend's husband worked with this company, Allied Constructors. So I said, all right, I looked him up in the phone book, half cocky, because you're full of piss and vinegar when you comes out of school. So I calls up, and it says, would you like to speak to the owner, Andrew Driscoll, or would you like to speak to the project manager, Brad Shepard, or Bob Lynch? And I said, I'll speak to the owner, I guess. So I just pipes up, hey, Andrew, you looking for anybody? Right at the blue, was like, that's not in my makeup anymore to do something like that. But at that time, I was full of piss and vinegar.
Yeah.
I guess he liked my approach, and he gave me a try. He said, come on for a little while. And we were in need of a young engineer to do some quality control work. So at that time, they sent me down to Department of National Defense job site down in Kittyvitty. They were doing all the structural concrete for, they were a partner in that project. So it was a fairly large scale project. And I started working with there, and I worked alongside Brad Shepard. And he was one of the past chairs of the NLCA, and he was actually the past. When he finished the NLCA a couple of years ago, he was doing the position I'm doing now, which is standard practice chair. So Brad had become my mentor at that point. Really, Brad was my first mentor when I come out of school, and I worked with Brad for a number of years, and certainly learned a whole bunch of what to and what not to do in this industry. Right. So I was down there on this job doing quality control, and it was supposed to be an office job, really, just walk around the field a little bit. But of course, me being the way I was, this office setting is not for me, right? I can't sit and look at a monitor for 8 hours a day and drink coffee. I'm just not satisfied. I was always hands going. And at that point, on that job, then I started getting more and more, just learn about the tradesmen, learn how stuff was actually built, and made friends with the tradesmen, learned about their families, learned where they come from, why they do what they do. And, I started working, helping the guys, helping bang formwork together, or lifting things, driving forklifts, getting up in lifts, whatever needed to be done. I was there helping, vibrating concrete. I know that the project superintendent there, Paul Purdy, on that job for all, man, he was a good buddy of mine, and he became right to me. He said, geez, Max, you don't mind pulling it, slagging on that vibrator, and that's hard work. Any tradesman, that's the hard work. And that's what I was into. I like the hands-on approach. And so we finished that job up with Allied, and I moved on then to Babel's Big Pond, working on the water treatment plant there for the city of St. John's. So I came at sort of the finishing stages. I looked after a lot of the commissioning of that and get the plant up and running and stuff, because that was back to what I had known when I worked with Faye Environmental. I knew water treatment systems. I knew how water flowed, and I knew how to treat it. So I was kind of using some of my cooperative experience and put it to the real life.
Max, I'm going to just jump in here for a second. I want to go back a step. I got to tell you, there's got to be dozens of people that are going to listen to this, and they're going to resonate with exactly what you just talked about. You're a hands-on guy. The academic stuff wasn't really floating your boat, but you put your head down and you got through it. You got some great experience through co-op, where you were able to put your hands into projects, and then things started to click and started to resonate with you, right? Yep. But there's one thing I wanted to pick up on there with you. You talked about the intricacies of an engineer working with the trades. That's a very, very sophisticated relationship that's important to learn early. Would you agree?
Absolutely. There's a saying we use in construction, and I'm sure you guys have probably heard it in your industry too, is it fits on CAD. So engineers will draw up their plans in AutoCAD, and everything fits so nice on this set of plans. And like Patrick said, it's like military precision the way it works. But when you get in the real world and you got a 24-inch piece of duct work, and you got two 2-inch water lines, and you got them insulated with insulation, and you got conduits running. The next thing you know, they give you 25 inches of ceiling space to put put 30 inches of stuff. It just like on CAD, yes, it fits. You can draw it out. But in the real world, when you go to put that T-bar up, it's just not fitting.
Yeah.
So,
In the military context there, Max, they use the expression that the best plan never survives its first contact with the enemy. So it's very similar to what you talk about there.
yeah.
For sure. What are you doing in the moment now, Max? What are you working on right now?
All right. So in this moment now, I moved on from Allied, I don't know, about 7 years ago, 6-7 years ago. I come with this. I went with a small company, very small company. Canaan Platforms is the company I work with now. So we're kind of a mother-father shop. We work out of Sherrstown, very low-profile company, and we do, $20 million worth of work a year. But what I like, I work with big companies. So you had resources, you had an estimator, you had a safety person, you had an office manager. When I went with a small company, we don't have none of that. I work, the owner and I work alongside of each other, and we, if I need a safety plan done, well, I don't pass that on to another department. I do the safety plan. If I need to bid a job, well, there's no one to pass on. I bid the job, then I manage the job, and I build the job. So I get every aspect of construction. I get to see it. Yeah. And because we're a small company, we do a number of small projects as opposed to 1, 2, 3 big projects. We got our teeth in 7, 8 different owners. So I got such an experience working with so many different owners in different places. And it's just such an experience I've gotten the last 7 or 8 years to know, because we're small, we got to do everything ourselves, and we don't mind it. We like it. We like doing everything ourselves, and we like to get to meet all these people. And it's not always a walk in the park. Don't get me wrong. There's lots of days, man, I'm here scratching my head. You can see the top of my head. There's not very much hair there, and that's some stress in this industry. I'm not going to lie. It's not an industry with no stress. You're dealing with big amount of money, and the smallest mistake can cost you a lot of money and sink you. So you do have to take that very serious, and you got to think about everything you're doing.
And you know what, Max, back to your education, like you learned right from the start when the challenges of your education presented themselves. I really, really like the way you introduced this, because, I went through business school, a lot of challenges, but it does prepare you. Trying to meet those academic standards prepares you for the real world, because, as you said, there's stress, there's deadlines, there's all of that.
Oh, absolutely. It's I don't advocate for being an engineer all the time, because it really wasn't for me, the academic side of it. It never was. It didn't come natural to me, and I had to work hard. I had to earn my diploma and stuff like that. And,
Yeah,
Alan, I assure you, Alan, there's people out there right now that when they watch this and they understand the struggle they're in, there is a future, because as a student, sometimes you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, absolutely. The way I put it to people, Jerry, if I can do it, anybody can do it. I got to be quite honest, quite frank with you. If I could become an engineer, there's not one person out there who can't become an engineer. I wasn't good at math. I wasn't good at English. I wasn't good at physics. I had to work. At high school, yes, it come to me pretty natural. I walked through high school, got in that university, got a memorial, put me out. They kicked me out to the street.
But you didn't give up. You didn't give up.
I didn't give up. No, I kept at it, because Dad told me I had to do it. He kept on me, man. And he worked me. And I appreciate that now later in life.
Not only your dad, but you said you had meetings with the dean, and I'm sure they kind of encourage you. People in general, I honestly believe that people want to see you succeed. They want to see you do well, right?
Oh, absolutely. They do want to see you succeed. And that was the one thing. Once you got into your discipline at Memorial, you were a part of I guess a family, maybe. I don't know if that's the right term, but you had a group of peers with the same interests as you, and you had the same professors. So you, at the end of the day, you were known to who you were working with. It wasn't you weren't just a number and this whole look to your left, look to your right thing. You were going through as a group, and you worked together.
as a team, right?
as a team. But
Yeah.
you had to do your own success was on you, right?
Yeah.
You
But
know?
but just like any team, right, Max? I mean, even in the construction industry, there's a team there in the build, but everybody's got to lift their weight and they got to do their thing. So I get it. It's a very nice analogy for what you're doing now. You know, we've talked to a lot of people in the construction industry in Newfoundland, and it just seems like it's such an inviting place where people are welcome in, and people like you are willing to pass on your knowledge and experience. Tell me a little bit about the openness of the industry.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've worked with quite a lot. Like I said, I take the cooperative education part of it pretty serious. I always thought that was a big deal, and I have taken on several students. I've had females, males. I've had people from China, people from Africa, all over the world. I've mentored, not the full level of their education. I've certainly give a lot of people a bit of advice and took them on with us as work term students and try to teach them something. And sometimes the industry is just not for that person either, right? I mean,
Right.
I've had one guy that I took out of school. He graduated the technology program, and he was an engineer technologist, and he come with us, man, and he didn't know what a footing was when I took him on, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And now he's out managing a $10 million air hangar project for a Canine platform. So he come on, he had a lot to learn. Like he came in, didn't know what a footing was, didn't know how you poured concrete. And I think he thinks of me as his mentor, and he speaks highly of me. And I've worked with him right from the day he come out of school, and he did come from a cooperative program, so it was a little bit different, right? The program he did. So I took him on, and we've taught him everything that he knows and made him into the superintendent that he is today. And someday he'll move on and do great things with someone else. And
How does that make you feel, Max, when you know you're part of it?
Yeah, no, it makes me feel good, that I helped make someone else a career. They come in, and this mightn't have been the industry for them, but they chose to stick it out and learn, take up. I mean, not every day am I as fuzzy as I am here now. There's some days I'm not very pleasant to look at. When things aren't going good, I do show my emotions on my face, to be quite honest with you. I get ticked off at people you're dealing with, and if something's not going right, or the sub trade is not there when they should be, or whatever, then I'm having to deal with all this. And sometimes, as the saying goes, the crap flows downhill, and I'd be passing it on to the young man I was mentoring. And I guess he knew to take it with a grain of salt, because I always said, I'm not mad at you, I'm mad at the project. But I said, sometimes it comes out, right?
I bet your passion finds its way into some solid results. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, we've done some interesting projects. Again, we don't usually do the easy stuff. It's usually fairly more complex projects that we're into. A lot of moving parts to it that a lot of people shy clear of, and we'll try anything. We've done a lot of work for a lot of different companies, and we work a lot in healthcare, and we do new builds, and every day is different for me. I don't, last night I was in the health science moving pallets to get stuff done so the boys could get another bit of work done today, right? So we're constantly doing things to keep things going, and there's always a bit of fun.
Max, you're a guy that clearly has had a wonderful journey, and you can feel the passion in your voice about what it is you do. I love your story about it. Just sometimes things don't come easy right out of the gate, but if you continue doing and you get a little bit of a push along the way, you can achieve just about anything, can't you? And on that note, Max, what would a piece of advice be that you would leave somebody who might be looking at this industry?
Well, the one thing with my piece of advice is, don't be afraid of a bit of hard work. Hard work will get you places. You don't need to know a lot of stuff, and you don't need to be all that smart, I guess, when it comes to academics, but you just got to be prepared to do the work. If you want to do the work, you can have a successful career like me, and like many other people. You just got to be willing to get out of bed, go to work in the morning, and do that extra bit of initiative, and this could be an industry for you.
Jerry, your thoughts?
Well, I just want to say thanks, Max. You know, your forthrightness in this conversation about university and the challenges, and then talking about buddies. Like, it's obvious to us listening to you, you're passionate, and you know, this has not been an easy road, but you've stuck it out. And by sharing this, you know, hopefully there's someone out there that gets inspired to join this industry. So thanks for joining us today.
No, thank you.
Well, that was another wonderful edition of the Building Newfoundland and Labrador podcast, presented by the Newfoundland and Labrador Construction Association and produced by Gale Force Winds. I have to tell you, Max, it was great to be in conversation with you. You're clearly the type of guy that likes to get his hands into things, and there's no doubt about it. You're passionate about your industry. And I can tell you that if there's a young person or somebody that's looking at this industry as somewhere to go, I don't think you could find a better fella to meet than a guy like Max Day, because he's willing to give you a hand. So Max, thanks very much for what you do.
Thanks, guys.
Well, welcome to another edition of the Building Newfoundland and Labrador podcast, presented by the Newfoundland and Labrador Construction Association, produced by Gale Force Winds. I'm Alan Dale, and with me as always, my good buddy from the East End of St. John's. How are you, Jerry?
Doing well this morning, getting close to Christmas now. One of the things that I'm excited about is talking to Craig Drover. I first met Craig last year during the Rock Awards, I believe it was, when you were chair and MC of that abbreviated virtual event. But you are also the past chair, and you were the chair during COVID. We're going to get into all that, and I'm really looking forward to hearing some of that experience.
Yeah, absolutely, Jerry. It's always such a pleasure to be in conversation that are with people that are making a true impact to Newfoundland and Labrador. They're building things, and I love talking to people that build things. So Craig, without further ado, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Well, I'm Craig Drover. As mentioned, I'm the past chair of the Newfoundland and Labrador Construction Association, and the current secretary and treasurer. My paid job, I'm a project manager and estimator at Genco Electrical Contractors. We're a commercial electrical contracting firm where we work all over Newfoundland and Labrador.
Where are you from, Craig, originally?
Originally, I'm from Come By Chance.
And
made the move to St. John's when I was just a little fella.
Is that right?
And I've been here ever since. I never did get involved in the working away thing. Probably missed out on some money, but who knows? It is what it is, right?
That's okay. It's all right to have your whole career right there in Newfoundland.
Well, there is
I'm there.
a price
I'm
to
there.
put on there is a value in going home every evening, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Craig, was construction work and electrical work big part of your life growing up? Where does the passion come from for you?
Well, again, growing up in Come By Chance, of course, that's where the oil refinery is, and there was a lot of opportunities in the construction and then in the subsequent operation of the oil refinery for tradespeople. And it seems like I was probably destined to become an electrician. The whole area is made up of electricians, millwrights, welders, and carpenters. And everybody else works at one of the hospitals out there for the most part. So most of my family were tradespeople, and I guess that's where it came from.
And I didn't know that about Come By Chance, but that's a great way to explain that part of Newfoundland. There's a lot of tradespeople in that little hub, eh?
There are. There's a good many of them. A lot of my friends growing up, seems like electricians and welders were the big numbers out there.
Right. And so, what was your pathway into that field?
Well, my father was an electrician, and he worked, of course, worked on those kinds of projects like Come By Chance, Churchill Falls, Wabush. But later on in his career, he decided to become a contractor. So that was around 40 years ago. So I was just a young fellow, so I was pretty much exposed to it all my life growing up, electrical contracting.
Right. So where did you go to school to pick up the skill?
Well, interestingly enough, I did the first year of electrical engineering technology at College of North Lake, well, Cabot College at the time.
Yeah.
Did the first year, and I had some experience working, and I was used to having some money in my pocket, and I didn't know if 2 more years of trade school was for me. So I went to industrial training, it was called at the time. I don't know what the new government department is called now, even though I should. And I signed on as an electrical apprentice and got involved in the direct entry program.
Okay. So you basically were formally trained by a senior electrician, and you went through the apprenticeship program, eh?
That's right. Yeah, it's typical for all electricians. That is exactly how it works. You go, you do your schooling, then you go out and work for a bit, go back to school, work for a bit, and that's how it goes.
You must have had some great mentors along the way, did you, Craig?
I had some fantastic mentors along the way. I have to say, I had a few that weren't so fantastic, but the great ones overshadowed the not so good ones. You know,
They stick out.
Yeah.
It's funny, Alan, you know, in every aspect of the interviews that we're doing on our platform is people are being mentored, and it's nice to know that. So, you know, Craig, anyone watching this, some youth that are hoping to get into this industry, they need to know that they will be mentored. You know, we want everybody to be successful, don't we?
Oh, of course. And, you know, a lot of people say, I guess it's a bit of a cliche or whatever, but they say you don't learn anything in school, you learn everything on the job site, which is not entirely true, but mostly true. The amount of knowledge and experience you get on the job site, working with your peers, with you know, as an apprentice, working with journey persons and people with all this experience. I mean, you really, you can't put a value on that.
Right. Craig, but you point out that, you know, you had some good mentors and so not so good mentors along the way, and that's a pretty normal thing. But I find that you learn as much from the ones that you did, you know, that might have taught you some things. I don't ever want to do that. You learn as much from those as you do the ones that were really a path that you want to follow. Would you agree? Absolutely.
I mean, you know, you got to learn what you have to do, and you also got to learn what you shouldn't do.
Right. Yeah.
So
anytime
you're any mentor you have, no matter how you feel about them, you're going to get some knowledge from you. You have to. It's
right. I mean, that's dangerous work too, right? I mean, you're in and around electricity. You got to get it right.
It can be dangerous, sure. You know, we're trained so that we can, you know, we don't get ourselves in trouble. But yeah, you know, you got to be careful at all times. You got to, you know, you got to have your wits about you. Sometimes we all get a little complacent, but I mean, that's in every aspect of life. But yeah, you know, you got to have your wits about you and watch what you're doing for sure.
So tell me a little bit about Genco right now. What are you guys involved in?
We do mostly commercial projects. For example, we just finished up the new Capital Hyundai building on Kenmount Road. We're working now on a new pharmacy over on Torbay Road, as well as renovations to a couple of banks, one downtown and one out in Paradise. We are doing one housing development. It's 26 units up in St. Anthony. And that's the major projects we're involved in right now. We've got a few coming in the hopper, so fingers crossed on those.
There you go.
It's interesting, sorry, to hear that St. Anthony is having 26 housing units. That's fantastic. Obviously, you know, there's a depth and breadth of economic activity right across the island for you.
We've been in St. Anthony now since 2019. This is our 5th consecutive project in the area.
Wow. Craig, we talk to a lot of folks in your industry, and one thing that jumps out at me is that there's a great opportunity right now for young people to get involved in it. And it's a type of work that not only is it interesting work, you see your results right away, but good paying jobs. Would you agree?
Absolutely. The opportunities they're there now, and of course, with COVID, we had a little bit of a slowdown, and things weren't so great. But now that tendering seems to be up, and things are coming back around, government spending some more money, private industry is spending some more money. So there will be opportunities for young people to get into the trade as well. In the province, we've got such an aging workforce. All these journeypers, these mentors you mentioned before, they're going to want to retire at some point. We're all working with the hopes to retire, so those folks are going to need to be replaced. So there are opportunities, and they're good paying jobs. We're not, not to knock minimum wage jobs, but these are not minimum wage jobs, and there's always opportunity to advance as well.
Yeah, I find that as well, Craig. The industry largely, although many times would be competitive on projects, they seem to be very collaborative in how they share ideas and how they want to grow together to allow everybody to thrive in the process. And we see that coming out in conversations with people like Rhonda Neary, who are deeply involved in the Construction Association. And I know that you're involved in the Construction Association. Tell me the importance of that collaboration in your industry.
It's I guess priceless. You share ideas. You can't come up with every idea on your own, so you can use other people's ideas. You can talk about things, come up with solutions. As contractors and construction workers, when it comes to a project, we're not just individual companies and individual groups of people. We're a team. We all work on a project with the same goal to get it done, and we have to work together. If we don't work together, we're all going to fail. So I guess we're kind of predisposed to collaborate anyway, but sharing of ideas is it's paramount.
Yeah,
Alan, what's interesting about this conversation too, Craig, is that you've given of yourself as a volunteer on that board. You're helping your competitors. And that's a good thing. Like, as you always say, Alan, a rising tide lifts all boats. It's interesting the quality of ideas and things that you lay on the table in many of these meetings helps everyone in your industry, doesn't it?
Oh, sure. If I'm helping my competitors, but they're helping me too, and so it's reciprocal. And as well, when you're involved with industry associations, you get to make these contacts with people that there's really just a couple ways to make contacts in our industry is to work with somebody on a project or through networking opportunities. I've met people through the Construction Association that I probably wouldn't have had the opportunity to meet otherwise. And so there's one aspect to it. And as well, you get to meet people that you didn't realize you may have some common ground together, and it can turn out to a partnership or a venture down the road. So, networking is, in the days of COVID, networking is not what it used to be, but networking is valuable.
Yeah, it's 100% valuable, right? And it doesn't always pay off in the moment, but sometimes the conversations you had 2 years ago spill into a contract or some work 2 years down the path, eh?
Oh, absolutely. You can talk to somebody and say, "Oh yeah, never heard of you before, but yeah, sure, I'll give you a shout if I need something sometime." And like you said, right out of the blue, here's an opportunity, and opportunities. That's what leads to success.
Right. And Craig, it speaks to the openness, right? People are open to share ideas, open to opportunities and stuff like that. And I find when I talk to people in the Construction Association or industry, in Newfoundland, is that they're very open to that. They're very open to sharing ideas and looking at things a little differently. And again, I go back to the concept that they get it, that a rising tide floats all boats here, and they want to help and see one another. Sorry, Jerry, I cut you off.
Well, I was just going to say, you know, we're on the topic of the Construction Association, and Craig, you were chair. You came on just prior to COVID, I think, and you have a kind of a funny story that I hope you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, sure. I guess apparently COVID is my fault. At my address at the AGM when I was the incoming chair.
When was that? When was that AGM?
That was in late February of 2020. So just I guess a couple of weeks before the shutdown, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, one of our initiatives were I said we're going to do some of our meetings virtually. Well, we certainly did them virtually, didn't we?
It's wonderful having a conversation with you. Clearly, you know, you come from a family of tradespeople. You come from a part of Newfoundland I didn't know that was heavy into trades folks. What would a piece of advice be that you would leave us with here today?
A piece of advice. Well, I guess if you're considering getting into the trades, you know, really do your research and see what your opportunities are and what you can do. You know, you can go and become an electrician and, you know, you still got more opportunities besides that. You know, sometimes we work with engineering students on work terms and, you know, a question I'll always ask them is, you know, what did you expect what kind of opportunities did you expect once you finished your training? And if they've got so much opportunity, you can get into design, they get into oil and gas, they get into construction. And that would be my biggest piece of advice. Yeah, just really explore what your opportunities are and, you know, try to do something you really enjoy.
Jerry, your thoughts?
Well, it's interesting, you know, as I said, I met Craig last year during the Rock Awards, and it's just a weird time. And I reflect, you know, Craig, on the challenges that you must have had as the chair of an association a couple of weeks before a lockdown. You know, just if you could touch on a couple of things on that in terms of what you learned from that and leading during a time like that.
Oh, well, lessons learned, there were so many of them. I can't take all the credit for running the ship. It's the staff we have at the Construction Association who really, you know, kept it afloat. You know, on the outside looking in, just as a member or a customer of the Construction Association, except for that first week or so where the whole world stopped, you wouldn't realize we had stopped. And a lot of this was because, well, all of it was because of the staff. We had daily updates on our email blast to our members to provide information at the time when all the information was new. You know, but when it comes to what we've learned, you know, we learned that we can do things differently. We can do things more efficiently. And again, virtual meetings instead of driving around for meetings. And with our education and training, we had already been in pretty good shape to offer virtual training. We had previously with our training, it would be, you know, mostly in class and a few people would attend virtually, people who are out of town or, you know, in remote areas. But having that infrastructure in place, we were able to continue our training 100% virtual with really without much interruption. So, you know, it wasn't all, you know, bad news from COVID, even though, of course, wish it never did happen. But it taught us that we can be more efficient and we can, you know, we can rise and meet the challenges.
Yeah, no, good. Thanks, Craig. I really found that answer very interesting, and thanks for your leadership during that time.
Again, I can't take all the credit. The staff at the Construction Association, they're the rock stars.
Well, Craig, thanks very much for the conversation. Craig, thanks very much for the conversation here today. It was wonderful to chat with you and to hear a little bit about your journey, and certainly to hear about the opportunities that exist within the industry largely, and your approach to kind of explore, see what's in the art of the possible for you coming out of school, or even looking to go into school. I sense there's a lot of real great opportunity within the Construction Association. So thank you very much for joining us on the Building Newfoundland and Labrador podcast, presented by the Newfoundland and Labrador Construction Association, produced by Gale Force Winds. Craig, real pleasure to chat with you today. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Thank you very much. I had a great time.
Thank you for tuning in to the Building Newfoundland and Labrador podcast, presented by the Newfoundland and Labrador Construction Association, produced by Gale Force Winds.